In keeping with the theme started in the previous video, I'm going to continue installing fixtures on the deck. This time I'll be focusing on the Focsle deck and the Quarterdeck. On the Focsle deck, I'll be replacing this hatch with a 3D printed resin component that has much higher detail in comparison to this blank slab. And I will install these cranes, however I will replace them with photo-etch. The FlyHawk Super Detail Upgrade Kit has provided 4 replacement photo-etch cranes. I'm not too sure about the installation of these aft cranes, so I'll leave them off. So for now, I will just install the 2 forward cranes. Moving to the quarterdeck, I'll install the flag post and replace these 2 hatches with resin 3D printed components, as well as install the missing hatch over here. And I'll end the video by installing these 4 ladders, which will be replaced with photo-etch. The photo-etch cranes come in 2 parts, the crane itself and then a support strut. The crane component needs to be inserted into an opening on the vertical post of the support struts. But before I can do that, I need to fold the support struts. This is a simple fold, but because this photo-etch is very delicate, I'm going to use the photo-etch folding tool. I want to be able to fold across the entire length of that piece of photo-etch in one go instead of using tweezers and trying to fold it up in sections. Using a photo-etch folding tool will make this considerably easier and keep all the photo-etch nice and straight. What I'm paying most attention to when making these folds is to ensure that the post is going to be centered and that each of the struts are spread to the same angle. Once I'm happy with the state of the support struts, I apply a small drop of extra thick super glue to the base of the crane and then insert it into the slot to tack it in place. It then requires a little bit more adjustment to ensure that it is correctly positioned in the slit, and once I'm happy with its position, I reinforce the bond using extra thin super glue that I apply with a wire. While I'm working with photo-etch, I might as well also fold the ladders and the platforms that go on the quarterdeck. I'm also going to fold the ladders with the photo-etch folding tool. In my experience, any photo-etch that is quite delicate is best folded with the photo-etch folding tool. In the past, when I've tried to fold ladders with tweezers, I've gotten the posts of the ladder out of alignment, and it's just not worth the effort than having to try and get them back in alignment. The photo-etch folding tool makes this a lot easier and you get a good outcome every time. After folding up the hand railings, I hold the ladder upside down and use a blade to push out each of the steps. Next, I'll fold the platforms. Here, it's just the hand railings that need to be folded up into position. These are simple folds that do not require the photo-etch folding tool. I can simply push the handrails into position using tweezers. There is also one plastic component that needs to be prepared, that is the flag post. This is one of the worst affected parts by flashing, and I'm seriously considering replacing this component with brass or styrene stock. I'm just going to have to see how it turns out. It's easy enough to pull off the model and replace at a later point if I'm not happy with the outcome. Being a long and thin piece of plastic is a bit awkward to clean up, but I am able to get it into reasonable state using a bar file. Now that all of the components have been prepared, they can be painted. Everything is going to get a base color of XF53, the color that I'm using to represent HMS Hood's superstructure. After the paint has dried, I then detail the components. The cranes require their cables to be painted in black. I think that's a better representation instead of having everything in just gray. And the hand railings for the ladders need to be painted in brown since they were actually made of wood. To paint these finer details, I just use a paintbrush. It would be really complicated and unnecessary to try and paint this with the airbrush. Now that all the components have been painted, I can begin the installation. I'm going to start on the Focsle deck by installing this forward hatch. Since these 3D printed components are printed out of a resin material, I have to glue them down using super glue. Plastic cement won't work. So I apply a small drop of thick super glue to the plate where the hatch will be installed, and then place the hatch on top of the glue. Next I will install the cranes. The cranes need to be installed over these holes. These holes were left on the deck for the plastic cranes that came with the kit. Fortunately, I don't need to be too concerned about these holes because the vertical post of the crane is just big enough to cover the hole. However, I don't want there to be a cavity under the crane, so I first fill the hole with thick super glue. Thick superglue is then applied to the underside of the crane and the support struts, and the crane is placed onto the deck. That is everything that needs to be done to the Focsle deck. So now moving over to the Quarterdeck. First, I'm going to install the hatches. They're nice and flat, so I'm not going to accidentally knock them off after I've installed them. These hatches are installed using the same method as I used to install the hatch on the Focsle deck. I apply a small drop of thick superglue to the deck and then place the hatch on the deck. Now for the flag post. Since this is a plastic component, I can glue it in place using plastic cement. Here I'm using thick plastic cement, well contacted professional. I prefer to use plastic cement when I can because it doesn't dry very quickly. That allows me the time to correctly position the component before the glue sets. That is particularly useful in something like a flag post where you need to ensure that it is standing vertically. If you use super glue, it is something that can set a bit too quickly and then you have the flag post at a weird angle. That's difficult to correct. Now for the most difficult components in this video to install, the platforms and their ladders. I'm going to install the platforms first before I attach the ladders because I think it'll be a bit more easier to keep everything in proper alignment if I do it this way. There is always a little bit of tolerances and adjustments that you need to do to make everything look straight. And if I have the ladder pre-glued to the platform before installation on the ship, I might have a little bit more difficulty making sure everything appears correctly aligned. Doing it this way just gives me a little bit more flexibility. To glue the platforms in place, I apply thick super glue to the side of the superstructure and then place the platform in contact with the glue. Once it is lightly tacked in place, I reinforce the bond with extra thin superglue and then accelerate the drying of the glue using superglue accelerator. Once I'm happy with the position of the platforms on the port side of the ship, I can attach the ladders to them. In this scenario, I found that the best way to install the ladders was to place them dry on the model and then apply a little bit of thin superglue to the base of the ladder on the deck to just tack it in place. At this point, the bond holding the ladder in place is very delicate, but it is strong enough for me to be able to reorientate the model, get in at a better angle to then apply more extra thin superglue to other areas of the ladder to properly bond it in place. This kind of work where there are multiple angles and two components that need to be very precisely positioned is quite tricky. It did take me quite a long time to get everything orientated in a way that I'm happy with. When I repeated this process for the starboard side of the ship, I had just that little bit more experience, so it went a bit quicker. That is it for this video. Everything on the Focsle deck and Quarterdeck is complete. Well, everything apart from the main armament and hand railings, that is. So in the next video, I'm going to go back to the shelter deck and work on adding more details to that area of the ship. If you would like to support this channel or see how the ship looks when it is completed, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.